Hey guys, Danielle with Pure Root Wellness. Got a new topic today, and as you can see from the swirling delicious donuts, we are going to talk about our sugar buzz situation. So, let's not act like we all don't know that sugar is not great for our health. We know this. There's no eyebrow raised there. But we still eat it because, let's be honest, sugary delicious treats are just the bomb diggity. Myself, I'm guilty of never turning down a vegan chocolate chip cookie. I love chocolate. It is, I try and choose the dark, less processed chocolate for at least some antioxidants. But I know, consciously when I'm making that decision, that is my treat. That is something where I sit here and go, okay, Danielle, I've negotiated, I've had that mental negotiation in my world where the chocolate was deserved at some point in time. But what about all the sugar that gets kind of sneaked into pretty much all of our other processed food that we eat? Drinks, fruit drinks, smoothies, flavored yogurts, our cereals, lunch meats, canned soup, pretty much anything that's really not in its natural state that comes from a box or a package. Sugar somehow ends up in that food. And, the reality is sugar is not a required nutrient for our diet. And there's really no, based off of the National Institute of Health, there's no safe amount that they can, put a number to say this is safe amount of sugar to consume. But really looking at maybe no more than 150 calories or 36 grams per day of sugar. And really, when you look at that chalks up to about 1 12-ounce can of pop. So not hard to do. Breaking down sugar itself, there's simple, there's complex. Fructose is the fruit sugar, sucrose is the table sugar, lactose is the milk sugar. Yep, milk sugar. A lot of sugar in milk. And these will raise your blood sugar faster. Now, the complex sugars are the fibers and the starches, the vegetables, whole grains, peas, beans, things like that. Slower rise in your blood sugar. And I will say, in regards to like the fructose itself, your body knows how to kind of handle these fruit sugars a little bit better, just simply because they are attached to the fibrous components of the fruit themselves. When you juice certain things and take away that fibrous, I'm not dissing juicing. I think it's amazing and wonderful, especially, fruit juicing, it's delicious. But when you're taking away some of that fibrous content, you will see that spike in what we call your glycemic index, which your glycemic index is really just, it puts a value on how fast your blood sugar will rise. And eating foods with high glycemic index will ultimately lead to obesity, heart disease, and most likely diabetes. So the donut was consumed. Now what? Your blood sugar takes about 20 minutes to spike. Your body responds by throwing some insulin at it. Now remember, insulin comes from the pancreas. And this is your body's way of just really trying to normalize the sugars that's swimming in the bloodstream. The insulin itself will redirect the sugar back into certain cells if there's excess. So it stores it in the liver, the muscle, and they basically want to store this for energy at another time. The reality is, though, your muscle and liver can only store so much glucose. Thus, the sugar gets stored in the fat, which is a more effective storage for survival. And thinking about this and taking a step back, our predecessors didn't have this problem because they didn't have the refined carbs, right? As a result, their body was very sensitive to insulin. They didn't have the insulin, resistance that we see today. It required very little to, get their body to produce this insulin because they didn't need to store it as fat. They were using it kind of all of the time. So it's kind of important to know that our ancestors, we kind of developed this stage and this role and how we look with this insulin resistance simply by just constantly bombarding our body with more intake of sugar, and our body going, okay, I can only handle so much, I can only give you so much insulin. But really, the bottom line is the more sugar you eat, the less access you have to the stored energy, i.e. the adipose or the fat storage. So let's talk a little bit about sugar, leptin, and fat. Leptin is a hormone that's actually made by the fat cells when the energy is deposited into fat. Leptin will actually travel to other organs in the body to tell them, hey, we've had enough energy, we can basically start working. When the leptin levels rise, your appetite actually diminishes. Your brain knows that it isn't starving and you won't want to eat as much. So the leptin is a good thing, but unfortunately, insulin will block that leptin. That's not a good process. So again, if you're leaning into pre-diabetes or you are a diabetic, your leptin levels are most likely low because the insulin that you're continuously asking your body to spit out to take the sugar out, creates kind of this weird cycle where you don't have enough leptin, but you're increasing your insulin because you're giving your body still all these simple sugars and you're starting to gain weight. And it's this weird cycle that makes it very challenging to kind of overcome. And, to complicate this matter, some people can actually have the leptin resistance. It's just like insulin resistance where your body is kind of resistant to the hormone. And again, the vicious cycle of leading into more leptin, more blood glucose issues. And, sugar itself, the brain knows when sugar enters the body. The sugar triggers a release of opioids and dopamine, basically the feel-good neurotransmitters. And this gives us kind of our high or euphoric feeling when we are ingesting sugar. And when you continuously pummel the body and even the brain will rewire in regards to sugar intake. So when we stop that sugar intake, we can actually experience a lot of withdrawal symptoms that come about from that. Be cognizant that if you are starting to back off on a lot of your sugar intake, you're going to have that, withdrawal process, that could potentially be happening. So sugar substitutes, also known as artificial substitutes, they're actually considered a food additive. Some sugar substitutes are natural, some are synthetic. The FDA actually has approved 5 artificial sweeteners: saccharin, aspartame, sucralose, neotam, which we don't hear a lot about, and acesulfame potassium. Aspartame is one where we call it NutraSweet or Equal. In a lot of diet sodas, sugar-free products, gum, ketchups, children's medicines, cough drops. And interestingly enough, it's about 200 times sweeter than just regular table sugar and breaks down into amino acids, phenylalanine, which is an amino acid for growth, but high levels can actually start causing some brain issues in younger children. And it actually breaks down into a small little bit of ethanol as well. So eventually, if you keep breaking down aspartame, it can get to the compound called formaldehyde. And, if you're in healthcare or familiar with what formaldehyde is, it can be used in industrial cleaners and actually embalming fluid for, patients who have either donated their body to science or have passed away. And they use embalming fluid for, during funeral homes to view the body. So kind of interesting there when you're talking about aspartame. Saccharin. It's the first sweetener to come about in 1979, used in toothpastes like dietary beverage, like pops and things like that. Unfortunately, it's been known to cause bladder cancer in rats. Originally in 2000, the USD of Health and Human Services removed saccharin from the list of cancer-causing chemicals, but interestingly enough, Canada has continued to ban saccharin just based on the animal studies and what we're kind of seeing. So just because the US is saying, hey, we don't need to ban this, other countries are obviously looking at the research, looking at the information, and understanding that in animal models, this is causing issues. No way should we shift this into, saying this is safe or having reasonable, no concern for human ingestion. Sucralose is Splenda. It is kind of like a chlorinated sugar, about 600 times sweeter than sugar. And looking at some of the potential health effects, it can increase your blood sugar and insulin levels. It decreases your insulin sensitivity, which isn't good. It can alter the gut microbiome by decreasing beneficial bacteria up to about 50%. So that means even though you've stopped using the sucralose, you're no longer consuming it, the GI tract will still have unfortunate negative effects because the damage was kind of already done to the microbiome itself. And, getting away from the artificial stuff, looking at some of the natural sweeteners that include erythritol, inulin, mannitol, sorbitol, stevia, and xylitol. Stevia is something that is plant derived. I actually grew a stevia plant a couple years ago in my own garden. It was pretty cool. Gets to be really big, and the leaves themselves, like literally you can take the leaf off and chew it, and it's very, very sweet. Has no effect on blood pressure, blood glucose, very low toxicity, no allergic reactions that have been recorded, and something that can be an optimal substitute if you're looking for more of a natural sweetener for drinks and foods, baking and things of that nature. Xylitol can also be found naturally or artificially, again mainly from plant materials. And something that can help. Actually, it was interesting, the one of the components or the properties that xylitol has, it actually has a significant anti-plaque effect on teeth and can reduce gingival inflammation. So something to where if you're seeing xylitol in more of your natural toothpaste, this is why it kind of has a double bang for your buck as far as the sweetening effect, but also protecting the enamel and reducing possibly gingival disease. And then inulin. Inulin is a type of like fermentable fiber found naturally in the roots of many foods, wheats, onions, garlics, artichokes. It's commonly extracted from like a chicory root and added to foods. It's fermented by bacteria that kind of normalize the colon and is actually considered a prebiotic. So another reason why maybe inulin would be a better choice for, baking and adding extra kind of delicious sweetness to meals. So really the take home, start paying attention to the hidden sugars. We all know that when we eat cake, ice cream, candy bars, pop, it has sugar in it. But I'm talking about the processed stuff that you didn't think would have sugar in it, the breads, the yogurts, the spreads, the ketchups, the soups, the dressings, all these things that you're like, oh no, there's probably not a limit. It starts to add up, and there is a lot of sugar in there. So making that decision to look at the labels, choosing complex sugars over simple sugars, using the natural sugar products to replace the simple and artificial sugars, looking at your products. Again, you may spend a little extra on the organic, less sugar brand, but in the long run, your health, you'll get good rewards from it. Your body will actually reward you for it, for making those better decisions. And just kind of an interesting graph. I'm not going to go over all of it, but I thought it was pretty cool. I'd never actually heard of this Palmyra nectar, but if you kind of look at all the check marks on the benefits of, pretty cool. Dates were kind of a good choice kind of next down the line. Maple syrup, honey, monk fruit. If you're looking purely at glycemic index for diabetics, monk fruit and stevia are among kind of the better choices. So really kind of looking at, what your preferences are, but just getting a good depiction of how many other options of kind of alternative sugary substitutes that are out there that are healthy for you and won't cause or wreak havoc, I should say, on your body's kind of overall health. I hope this was helpful. I hope all of you are doing well, and be well. Talk to you guys soon.